Alright guys, welcome back to yet another MapleStory Classic World overhaul video. This time we'll be talking about the scrolls and how they've changed in MapleStory Classic compared to old school MapleStory. So let's just get right into this. I'll start off with a little bit of a pre-ramble. First things first, dark scrolls such as the 30% and the 70% don't exist in Classic World, at least not now. If you didn't know, those scrolls have a 50% chance of just completely destroying your item. There are some people who are fans of them, some people who aren't. So a lot of the scrolls that used to grant stats such as top wear for strength, top wear for luck, gloves for dex, some of the accessory scrolls like pendants, those don't exist anymore. You'll see later, but a lot of the scrolls don't grant main stats anymore, such as strength, dex, luck, and intelligence. I suppose this is a bit of a nerf. I'm honestly not too sure what the stats of each corresponding class and what they give and what its importance is, but this basically means that trying to be able to equip your gears through getting stats through scrolls will be less likely. Another thing they changed is 100% scrolls grant 1 stat, that's typical. 60% grants 2, that's also pretty typical, and 10% gives 3 now. There's a couple 10% scrolls that would give 5 stats instead of 3, but they've all just been demoted to having 3 stats. Another change, there are earrings for crit damage now, and gloves for crit rate scrolls. In MapleStory Classic, every class gets a chance to have crit, and it seems that crit damage and crit rate will now be scrollable. Like, you can get crit rate from scrolls now, from your earring and your gloves to be specific. The earring grants crit damage and the gloves grant crit rate. It also seems that you can craft scrolls now. I'm not sure how this works exactly, but I'm assuming that scrolls will be a lot easier to get than before, because before the only way to get scrolls legitimately was just by farming mobs, and they had a really bad drop rate. All the scrolls now give 1 singular stat. So for example, what this means is take the claw for attack 10% as an example. The claw for attack 10% gives 1 luck, it gives 3 accuracy, and it gives 5 weapon attack. Now, the 10% scroll only grants 3 weapon attack, and so you lose 2 attack, 1 luck, and 3 accuracy for every 10% you land. This is a bit of a nerf. I'm not sure why they did this. I feel like they did this just to keep things simple. I'm not sure the reason why, but it exists, and the only scrolls that doesn't follow this rule is the defense scrolls, but if you're using a defense scroll, you're probably trolling. Moving on. There are no weapon accuracy scrolls anymore, so sword for accuracy, axe weapon for accuracy, these scrolls don't exist. All the scrolls are all the same for the weapons now. They give, you'll see. And finally, none of these changes are confirmed and can be subject to change for the official launch. This is more speculation for the closed testing happening on April 14th. So let's carry on. This is an image of the use items in MapleStory Classic, and there's a couple new things I can see here. Like, I believe some of these icons are for crafting. You got the pots, you got the elixirs, you got these meso pouches. This is kind of concerning me. But what caught my attention was actually this scroll right here. So we have the 100% here, the 60% here, and the 10% here, and then we have the 70%. But I don't believe 70% dark scrolls exist in classic MapleStory, at least not now. I could only assume that the 70% scroll icon is the new chaos scroll icon, and chaos scrolls have kind of changed in this game. I'll explain it in a second, but these are the scrolls that are available currently in classic MapleStory. There's the lesser scroll, which is just the 100% scroll. There's the intermediate scroll, which is now the 60% scroll. There's the greater scroll, which is the 10%, and then there's the chaos scroll, which is also 10%, but it gives 5 stats instead of the 3 that the 10% gives. And if you fail the scroll, the item destroys upon failure. So this is like, I don't know how to explain this perfectly, but the new Chaos Scroll is just a really strange form of the Dark Scroll. Instead of having a 50% chance of blowing up, if you fail this scroll, that means there is a 100% chance of it exploding and you never see your item again. However, if you take a look, this grants 5 stats instead of the 3 that the 10% gives. So technically, this new Dark Scroll is best in slot if you're trying to get, the strongest weapons and the strongest gear. You just got to make sure to land it, because if you don't land it, then you can say goodbye to your item. Another thing is the Chaos Scroll used to just be one scroll, but now there's just, it's like the next step. It's like the next upgrade to the 10%. So every scroll has a Chaos Scroll variation is what I'm saying, and it can be explained here. So this is every scroll that's available so far, and the numbers over here represent the stats that it gives depending on the color of the scroll. So for example, let's just take overall armor for Dex, okay, a very popular scroll. The 100% or the lesser scroll gives +1 Dex. The intermediate scroll, 60%, grants you 2. The 10% scroll, the greater scroll, grants you 3, and the Chaos Scroll for overall armor Dex grants you 5. Now remember, back then, the 10% overall Dex scroll would grant you 5 Dex, but now it only just grants you 3, just like any other 10%, like, I don't know, for example, like Helmet for Dex would give 3 Dex on a 10%. Now, overall armor also gives 3 Dex. So it's kind of a nerf, and it's kind of a, I don't know, it's like a big change. To have a 10% scroll, if you fail it, it does nothing to your item, versus a 10% scroll where it blows up your item if you fail it, but if you do get it, you get 2 extra slots. Anyways, although there might be a lot of scrolls on this page, I think the only scrolls that matter are actually these ones. I've kind of just jotted them down over here in my opinion. These are all the scrolls that will matter, and they'll probably be expensive or be worth quite a bit if you find them in game. So for example, the hat accuracy scroll, this will be used a lot for the warriors, and I believe the Sins will also be using these hat accuracy scrolls. There isn't any helmet scroll that grants stats anymore, so you're probably going to be using accuracy on it. Earring stat scrolls are going to be useful. In fact, any scroll that grants main stats, such as the cape, overall, earrings, they will be useful. They seem to be a lot more scarce in MapleStory Classic. Not only that, but back then Dex scrolls were very prominent in the game, but now it seems like it's equally divided. So there's an equal amount of Dex scrolls as there are, for example, int and luck scrolls. Earrings for crit damage, I believe, have a very good merit for becoming expensive and sought out. If you don't need stats, I feel like you probably want to get crit damage instead. I don't know, I feel like maybe every class could use crit damage, but it really depends on whether you need stats or if you just need more, you know, DPS. You'll have to choose from either getting more stats on your earrings or just getting crit damage on your earrings. I feel like crit damage is always useful to have, but there might be instances where having a stat earring could be nice too. In fact, I believe pros will probably have just a set of each one. They'll have a crit damage earring and a stat earring for sure. Cape for accuracy is also going to be pretty important. Any class that needs accuracy will probably be using accuracy scrolls. The thief class will need accuracy a lot more than before because the luck stat no longer grants you accuracy. Now it's only the dex stat that grants accuracy, so you're either going to have to put points into dex or you're going to have to find accuracy from scrolls. Shoes for jump and speed will be used a lot by the non-thieves or any class that doesn't have haste. That includes the pet jump and speed scrolls. Shoes avoid will probably be used by the thieves because there's no other scroll to use on the shoes besides these. And since thieves already get a lot of inherent speed and jump, having more avoidability on that matter will just be more useful because there's nothing else to scroll your shoes with besides these three right here. Gloves for attack and magic attack still exist, and I think they'll still be very useful. Even though that there is a glove for crit rate, now there's a scroll that gives you crit rate on your item. That will be nice, but I do think there's still a good reason to scroll for attack and magic attack for your gloves, especially when you consider that gloves for attack has a chance to hit a +5 weapon attack for a single upgrade slot if you're lucky. You could make some crazy work gloves by utilizing the chaos scroll. The era of the 10 attack work gloves may no longer exist now thanks to how the chaos scrolls work. The chaos scrolls are insane. Even though the 10% scroll, the greater scroll, got nerfed, everything that you want from the 10% scroll now you can find in the dark scroll, in the chaos scroll, this new chaos scroll. Of course, gloves for accuracy I think will also be a good contender for the gloves. I think all the glove scrolls are pretty good. Each of them provide a stat that will be beneficial to the class depending on what they need. I think crit rate is just always going to be good, so your best bet is to probably go for crit rate, but who knows how expensive these scrolls will be. Anyways, moving on. Here are my final thoughts on the scroll changes. My conclusion is that intermediate 60% scrolls will likely be the most sought after scrolls. That's pretty typical for MapleStory, but it'll be more so in this case. Every other scroll has kind of a downside to them, while the intermediate scroll is basically the same. The only thing that's maybe changed about this scroll is it doesn't give a bonus substat. So for example, Wand for magic attack would give 1 int and 2 magic attack if you landed a 60 on it, but now it'll only just grant you 2 magic attack. That int is not there anymore. It's a minor change, but it'll probably add up if you're used to playing MapleStory back then. I believe lesser scrolls will be used a lot more frequently too. I think lesser scrolls will be pretty cheap and easy to obtain. A lot of people will probably start off scrolling their gear with lesser scrolls. On the flip side, I believe 10% greater scrolls kind of suck compared to before. They definitely got nerfed. If you're thinking about, you know, the weapon 10% scrolls that used to grant 5 attack, or the overall armor scroll that used to grant 5 dex. The shoes for jump scroll got nerfed. It doesn't give you dex anymore. All in all, using the 10% will suck a lot compared to using anything else here. Compared to before, I think 10% scrolls will be very cheap. And of course, the new chaos scroll I think will be a very rare scroll to get, or it's going to be pay to win, I think. It's best in slot, and if you land a 10%, then you're in for a good ride. I think a lot of the people who are 10% scrollers will likely just start using chaos scrolls instead of greater scrolls. Just that +1 bonus stat compared to a 60% is just not worth the 50% chance loss that you get from the greater scroll. I don't know, maybe they'll change the percentage of the greater scroll or something, but for now, I think the meta would either to be used to land a 10% chaos scroll on the first slot and then spend the rest on 60s. Another thing is overall armors will still be very useful and probably better than the top and bottom combo. Now that top and bottom scrolls don't exist, there are no good top and bottom scrolls unless you're trying to be tanky. If you want stats on your items, especially your clothing, you're gonna want to go overalls because those are the only options available for scrolling stats on your equipment. In fact, the only equipments that do grant stats are the earrings, cape, overall, and that's about it if you don't even count the gloves for attack. Even gloves don't have it. The gloves for dex don't exist. So if you're going to want to get secondary stats, you're going to want to have to use an overall instead of the top and bottom. I also do believe attack work gloves are still meta and better than before. If there's a 10% scroll that hasn't been changed, it's the gloves for attack that grant +3, but now there's a chaos gloves for attack scroll that grants 5 attack if you land it. So I bet you there's going to be a lot of people crafting work gloves and throwing 10% chaos scrolls gloves for attacks. Honestly, this is the change that excites me the most, and I can't wait to try this out in the real game. And finally, accuracy will be an underrated stat to get. Whether you get it from skills, buffs, from your equipment, from your weapon, whatever the case may be, I think accuracy will be a heavily sought out after stat. I think if you're a warrior or if you're a thief, you're going to be looking for accuracy out the ass. Maybe if you're a mage, I'm not sure how accuracy works on mage, but any class that isn't the bowman will need to find accuracy in any ways possible. Anyways, that's it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. MapleStory Classic is soon starting to open its closed beta, so I'll see you guys then. Make sure you're subscribed so you can stay up to date with the newest MapleStory Classic news. I'll be streaming and playing the closed testing this upcoming week, so be sure to check that out. And I'll see you guys next time for the next updates that we see for MapleStory Classic.